What if I told you that a man who had everything, wealth, power, a Ferrari, threw it all away to find something far more valuable? And what if that something could change your life too? The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari by Robin Sharma isn't your typical self-help book. It's a wake-up call wrapped in a story that millions around the world have found life-changing. At its heart lies one powerful truth. Success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. Today we are diving deep into this transformative book. We'll explore Julian Mantle's incredible journey from a burned-out lawyer to an enlightened soul and uncover the 7 ancient virtues that can revolutionize how you live. Whether you are chasing success, feeling stuck, or simply looking for deeper meaning, this story has something profound to offer. So grab a cup of tea, settle in, and let's discover why sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what truly matters. Julian Mantle had it all figured out, or so it seemed. As one of the country's most successful lawyers, he commanded respect in every courtroom he entered. His bank account was overflowing, his reputation was spotless, and his red Ferrari was the envy of everyone who saw it. But behind the polished exterior, Julian was falling apart. His day started at 5 in the morning and ended well past midnight. He survived on fast food, caffeine, and sheer willpower. His relationships had crumbled under the weight of his ambition. His health was deteriorating, but he pushed through, believing that success justified any sacrifice. Then came that fateful day in court. In the middle of arguing a high-profile case, Julian collapsed. A massive heart attack at just 53 years old. As he lay there gasping for breath, surrounded by shocked colleagues, one question echoed in his mind. What's the point of winning if you're slowly dying inside? This moment of crisis became his moment of clarity. Julian realized that he had been climbing the ladder of success only to discover it was leaning against the wrong wall. He had gained the whole world but lost his soul in the process. The very success he had worked so hard to achieve had become his prison. Recovery gave Julian time to think, really think, for the first time in decades. He looked at his life with fresh eyes and didn't like what he saw. The Ferrari in his garage felt like a symbol of everything wrong with his priorities. The mansion felt empty despite being filled with expensive things. The accolades and achievements felt hollow when he had no one meaningful to share them with. That's when Julian made a decision that shocked everyone who knew him. He would sell everything, the Ferrari, the mansion, the law practice, and disappear. His colleagues thought he had lost his mind. His few remaining friends tried to talk him out of it. But Julian's mind was made up. He was going to find what he had lost along the way, his true self. After settling his affairs, Julian embarked on a journey that would change everything. He had heard whispers of ancient wisdom hidden in the mountains of the Himalayas, where sages lived lives of extraordinary peace and purpose. With nothing but a backpack and an open heart, he set off to find them. The journey was grueling. Julian, accustomed to luxury and comfort, found himself trekking through harsh terrain, sleeping under the stars, and surviving on simple meals. But with each step, he felt something shifting inside him. The constant noise in his head began to quiet. The anxiety that had been his constant companion started to fade. After weeks of searching, Julian discovered a hidden valley called Savannah. Here lived a group of monks who had mastered the art of living. They were called the Sages of Savannah, and they possessed something Julian had never seen before: genuine contentment. Despite having no material possessions, they radiated joy, wisdom, and inner peace. The sages welcomed Julian with open arms. They saw past his expensive clothes and recognized a soul in search of truth. Under their guidance, Julian began to learn ancient principles that had been passed down for thousands of years. These weren't just philosophical concepts, they were practical tools for living an extraordinary life. The head sage, Yogi Raman, became Julian's teacher. Through stories, meditation, and daily practices, Yogi Raman revealed 7 fundamental virtues that form the foundation of enlightened living.
Each virtue was represented by a symbol in a beautiful fable that Julian would never forget. The story went like this. In a magnificent garden stood a towering lighthouse, its beam illuminating a path of diamonds. Beside the lighthouse sat a sumo wrestler, powerful and disciplined, connected to the lighthouse by a thin pink wire cable. In the center of the garden bloomed a single fragrant rose, and nearby a golden stopwatch ticked away the precious moments of time. Each element of this story represented one of the seven virtues, and Julian spent months learning to embody each one. The transformation was gradual but profound. The stressed, unhealthy lawyer began to disappear, replaced by someone calmer, wiser, and more alive than Julian had ever been. Let's explore the first virtue. Master your mind. The lush garden in the fable represents the human mind, and this metaphor changed everything for Julian. Yogi Raman explained that your mind is like a garden. It will grow whatever you plant in it. Plant positive thoughts and you'll harvest joy and success. Plant negative thoughts and you'll reap misery and failure. Most people, Julian learned, are gardeners who have forgotten their gardening. They let weeds of worry, fear, and negativity grow wild, then wonder why their lives feel chaotic and unfulfilling. The sages taught Julian that mastering your mind isn't about suppressing thoughts, it's about choosing which thoughts deserve your attention and energy. Julian learned powerful techniques for mental mastery. Visualization became his daily practice. Every morning, he would spend time clearly imagining his ideal day, his goals, and the person he wanted to become. This wasn't wishful thinking, it was mental rehearsal that programmed his subconscious mind for success. Positive affirmations replaced the negative self-talk that had dominated Julian's inner dialogue for years. Instead of saying, I am too stressed or I can't handle this, he learned to say, I am calm and capable, and I choose peace in every situation. These weren't just words, they were declarations that slowly rewired his brain. The sages also taught Julian about the power of mental discipline. Just as you wouldn't let strangers walk into your home uninvited, you shouldn't let random thoughts occupy your mind unchallenged. Julian learned to observe his thoughts without judgment, then consciously choose which ones to engage with and which ones to let pass by like clouds in the sky. This mental training had immediate effects. Julian's anxiety decreased dramatically. His focus improved. He began to see opportunities where he once saw only problems. The constant mental chatter that had exhausted him for years finally quieted, replaced by a sense of inner calm he had never experienced. The second virtue revealed itself through the lighthouse symbol. Follow your purpose. Yogi Raman explained that a life without purpose is like a ship without a compass. You might stay busy, but you'll never reach your true destination. Julian realized that despite all his professional success, he had never really asked himself what he wanted his life to stand for. He had been so busy climbing the ladder that he never stopped to consider whether it was the right ladder. The sages taught him that discovering your purpose isn't about finding some grand world-changing mission. It's about understanding what makes you come alive and how you can serve others through your unique gifts. Through deep reflection and meditation, Julian began to uncover his true calling. He realized that his legal skills, combined with his new wisdom, could be used to help others find balance and meaning in their lives. His purpose wasn't to accumulate wealth or win cases. It was to guide people toward more fulfilling lives. The sages taught Julian to set goals that aligned with his purpose, not just his ego. Instead of asking, what will make me successful, he learned to ask, what will make me useful. This shift in perspective transformed how he approached every decision and opportunity. Purpose, Julian discovered, acts like a lighthouse in the storms of life. When you know why you're here and what you're working toward, the daily challenges and setbacks become much easier to navigate. You have a North Star guiding your choices and giving meaning to your struggles. The golden stopwatch in the fable represented the third virtue, practice kaizen. This Japanese concept of continuous improvement became one of Julian's most powerful tools for transformation. Kaizen teaches that small, consistent improvements compound into extraordinary results over time. Julian had always been an all-or-nothing person. He would either work 18 hours days or crash completely. The sages taught him a different approach: steady, sustainable progress through daily disciplines. Instead of trying to change everything at once, Julian learned to focus on small improvements that he could maintain consistently. He established morning rituals that set a positive tone for each day. 20 minutes of meditation, 30 minutes of reading wisdom literature, and 20 minutes of physical exercise became non-negotiable parts of his routine. These weren't huge time commitments, but their cumulative effect was transformational. The sages emphasized that discipline isn't about restriction, it's about freedom. When you have the discipline to do what's important rather than what's urgent, you gain control over your life. Julian learned that every small act of discipline was like making a deposit in the bank account of his future self. Reading became a daily practice for Julian. The sages had an extensive library of wisdom literature, and Julian devoured books on philosophy, spirituality, and personal development. He learned that leaders are readers, and that investing in your mind is the best investment you can make. Physical exercise, which Julian had neglected for years, became a cornerstone of his new lifestyle. The sages taught him that the body and mind are connected. When you strengthen one, you strengthen the other. Julian's daily walks in the mountains became moving meditations that cleared his mind and energized his spirit. The fourth virtue was symbolized by the sumo wrestler: live with discipline. Julian learned that willpower is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. But like any muscle, it can also become fatigued if overused without proper rest and recovery.
The sages taught Julian to start small with his discipline practice. Instead of trying to overhaul his entire life overnight, he began with tiny promises to himself that he could easily keep. He would make his bed every morning, drink a glass of water upon waking, and write 3 things he was grateful for each evening. These small acts of self-discipline might seem insignificant, but they had a profound psychological effect. Each time Julian kept a promise to himself, he built trust with himself. Each small victory created momentum for bigger challenges. The sages called this building your integrity account, making deposits through small acts of discipline that you could draw upon when facing larger challenges. Julian discovered that discipline brings freedom, not restriction. When you have the discipline to wake up early, you have more time for what matters. When you have the discipline to eat well, you have more energy for your goals. When you have the discipline to manage your finances, you have more options for your future. The sages also taught Julian about the power of environment in supporting discipline. They showed him how to structure his surroundings to make good choices easier and bad choices harder. This principle would later help Julian maintain his new habits when he returned to the modern world. The thin pink wire cable in the fable represented the fifth virtue: respect your time. Yogi Raman shared a profound truth with Julian. Time is the most precious gift you have been given, for it is the only gift that once lost can never be recovered. Julian realized how carelessly he had been spending his time. He had been busy but not productive, active but not effective. The sages taught him the difference between being busy and being purposeful. Busy people fill their time with activities. Purposeful people fill their time with priorities. Julian learned to plan his days with intention. Each morning, he would identify the 3 most important tasks that would move him closer to his goals. He learned to say no to good opportunities so he could say yes to great ones. The concept of time blocking became one of Julian's most valuable tools. Instead of letting his day be dictated by other people's urgencies, he learned to block out time for his priorities. He scheduled time for learning, reflection, exercise, and meaningful relationships, just as seriously as he once scheduled client meetings. Julian also learned the importance of rest and renewal. The sages showed him that even the most productive people need time to recharge. They taught him to view rest not as laziness, but as an investment in his future productivity and creativity. The fragrant rose in the garden represented the 6th virtue, selfless service. This virtue initially puzzled Julian. How could focusing on others help him find fulfillment? Yogi Raman explained that true happiness comes not from what you get, but from what you give.
The sages taught Julian that service is the rent we pay for living on this earth. When you focus solely on your own needs and desires, life becomes small and self-centered. But when you look for ways to serve others, life becomes expansive and meaningful. Julian began practicing small acts of service during his time with the sages. He helped with daily chores, assisted younger monks with their studies, and shared his legal knowledge when needed. These simple acts of giving filled him with a joy he had never experienced in all his years of taking and accumulating. The sages explained that service doesn't require grand gestures or huge sacrifices. It can be as simple as listening to someone who needs to be heard, helping a colleague with a project, or volunteering your skills for a cause you believe in. The key is to give without expecting anything in return. Julian learned that when you serve others, you serve yourself. The act of giving activates positive emotions, builds meaningful connections, and creates a sense of purpose that no amount of personal achievement can match. Service transforms you from a taker to a giver, from self-centered to other-centered. The final virtue was represented by the path of diamonds. Live in the present. This virtue tied all the others together and became the foundation of Julian's transformation. The sages taught him that happiness is not a destination you arrive at, it's a way of traveling. Julian realized he had spent most of his life either regretting the past or worrying about the future. He had missed countless precious moments because his mind was somewhere else. The sages taught him that the present moment is the only moment you can actually influence, so it deserves your full attention. Through meditation and mindfulness practices, Julian learned to anchor his awareness in the present. He discovered that when you're fully present, even ordinary moments become extraordinary. A simple meal becomes a feast for the senses. A conversation becomes a deep connection. A walk becomes a moving meditation. The sages taught Julian that presence is a skill that requires practice. In our distracted world, the ability to focus completely on one thing at a time is becoming increasingly rare and valuable. Julian learned techniques for bringing his wandering mind back to the present moment whenever it drifted to past regrets or future anxieties. Living in the present didn't mean Julian stopped planning for the future or reflecting from the past. Instead, he learned to do his planning and reflecting from a place of presence, making better decisions because his mind was clear and focused, rather than scattered and reactive. After months of learning and practicing these 7 virtues, Julian was ready to return to the world. But he was no longer the same man who had left. The transformation was complete, not just mentally and spiritually, but physically as well. The stress lines had disappeared from his face. His eyes sparkled with vitality. He moved with the grace and confidence of someone who had found inner peace. The sages had one final gift for Julian. They asked him to share what he had learned. They explained that wisdom kept to yourself eventually stagnates, but wisdom shared multiplies and grows. Julian's mission was clear. He would return to help others discover what he had found. When Julian arrived back in the city, his old friend and colleague John barely recognized him. Gone was the stressed, unhealthy lawyer who had collapsed in court. In his place stood a man radiating calm, confidence, and genuine joy. Julian had indeed sold his Ferrari, but he had gained something far more valuable: a life of meaning and purpose. Julian began sharing his story and the 7 virtues with anyone who would listen. He discovered that his legal background, combined with his new wisdom, made him uniquely qualified to help other high achievers find balance and fulfillment. His purpose had become clear: to guide others away from the trap of success without meaning. The Ferrari was gone, but Julian didn't miss it. He had learned that true wealth isn't measured by what you own, but how much you've grown. He had traded external success for internal fulfillment, and it was the best deal he had ever made. So what can we learn from Julian's incredible journey? The monk who sold his Ferrari teaches us that success without fulfillment is indeed the ultimate failure. It shows us that no amount of external achievement can fill the void created by neglecting your inner life. The 7 virtues Julian learned aren't just ancient wisdom, they are practical tools for modern living. Mastering your mind gives you control over your experience.
Following your purpose gives direction to your efforts. Practicing Kaizen ensures continuous growth. Living with discipline creates freedom. Respecting your time maximizes your impact. Serving others multiplies your joy. And living in the present allows you to actually enjoy the life you're building. You don't need to sell your Ferrari or retreat to the Himalayas to apply these principles. You can start today, right where you are, with small steps towards a more balanced and meaningful life. The question isn't whether you have time for these practices. The question is whether you can afford not to make time for them. Julian's story reminds us that it's never too late to change course. No matter how far you've traveled down the wrong path, you can always choose a new direction. The 7 virtues are waiting to transform your life, just as they transformed Julian's. Remember, happiness comes from living your life in harmony with your soul. Success is important, but fulfillment is essential. The choice is yours. Will you continue climbing the ladder of external achievement, or will you pause to make sure it's leaning against the right wall? The wisdom of the sages is now yours. The only question remaining is, which virtue will you begin practicing today?